Okay, a warm welcome to the session Urban Rural Discontinuities, ensuring equitable, green and healthy urban transitions in Europe and China through nature-based solutions. I would like to thank the organizers for this wonderful event and also our contributors. Some of them you can see here already, and of course, you as active participants and listeners. As one of the two session chairs, I briefly introduce myself. I'm an architect and urban planner and chair of the Habitat Unit at the Institute of Architecture at the TU Berlin. And I'm also researching across Germany and China in a BMBF-funded project called Urban Rural Assembly, Strategic Tools for Integrated Territorial Planning, Enhancing Urban Rural Integration and Circular Economies in the Huanyan Taishu region. And this project includes many PIs from Germany and China, also ICLE and UN Habitat, and some inputs in this session also reflect what our concerns are in this project. And now I hand over to the second session chair, Ellen Banzhaf.
Hello, my name is Ellen Banzhaf. I work at the Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research, URP2020. I work in the department Urban and Environmental Sociology, and I'm head of the working group Geomatics. I am the chair of this session together with Philipp Misselwitz, and we share also the two projects that are strongly contributing to this session. My project that I'm relating to is the European Union funded project ReGreen, Nature-Based Solutions. That was launched in September 2019 and has a 4-year runtime. It covers several cities in Europe and several cities in China. And I'm very happy to share with you quite a few contributions here in this session. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would quickly like to give an overview of how we have structured this session. We have one slightly longer introductory contribution by Anne Jensen and Duncan Russell. They will be introduced by Ellen in a second, then followed by 7 short 5-minute inputs. So we are trying to really stick to this time frame, and we will not respond to questions from the audience until all these inputs have been given. But as was explained to you right in the beginning, please use the chat to send comments and questions. They will all be gathered and then made available to us for our general discussion at the end. So we are really going to be very strict about timekeeping to not cannibalize on this important time for the discussion at the end. And we need to be really in time also to close the session at 3:15. But we are hoping, of course, that you will stick with us and join the discussion. So Ellen, would you please first introduce?
I'm happy to present our introductory talk given by Anne Jensen. Anne is an environmental sociologist and a senior researcher at the Department of Environmental Science, Aarhus University. And her research centers on policy analysis of environmental challenges. She is leading work package 6 on integrated urban governance in the ReGreen project. Anne, the floor is yours. Unmute. Unmute.
Thank you very much. And you will share the presentation, right? I don't see the presentation, but I don't know if you do. Ellen, you're unmuted, or you're muted, sorry. Well, while we're waiting for the presentation, I can just introduce our talk.
Excuse me, 1 second. I'm just trying to share my screen, which we have tested before, and it did work. 1 second. I have actually, I have shared it. Can no one see it?
Yeah, you can see it. It's just not in full screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to click on Bildschirmpräsentation.
Okay,
and then
sure.
you can make
Is it better
full.
now?
Yes, great.
Perfect. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Fine. Yes, thanks a lot, Philip. Yes, my name is Anna Jensen, and as Ellen and Philip said, this is a presentation that I will be giving together with Duncan Russell from Exeter University. I will talk now, and then Duncan will join us in the panel discussions. And our presentation is called Cities at a Crossroad, Nature-Based Solutions and Meta-Governance of Urban Green Transitions in Europe. Can you please go to the next slide? Thank you. And what we aim to do in this presentation is to examine how exactly that nature-based solutions, they interact with the governing that takes place. And in particular here, it's governing for transitions. And when we talk about transitions, it's like major changes or fundamental changes of the way that we want to steer the development of cities and countries. And during the presentation, we make the argument that nature-based solutions, they're very often presented as scientific solutions to preserve important ecosystem services, but they are also, and also at the same time enhancing human well-being in a wide understanding of human well-being. And in this sense, it's the design of nature-based solutions is dominated very much by natural science and economics. But when we go into and we sort of unpack how nature-based, how urban nature becomes a solution to urban problems and peri-urban, and also problems in the peri-urban interface and interaction, then we can see that grand challenges which nature-based solutions are aimed at, they seek to address, these are rooted in society and politics. And in this sense, it's also part of the fragmentation that is in modern policies between different political areas, between the urban and the rural and the natural environment. So one of the things that we argue in this presentation is that nature-based solutions, they're political as much as they're scientific, and that the success of nature-based solution depends on understanding this aspect of being political and part of policies. Next slide, please. So when we talk about nature-based solutions in the urban-rural interface nexus, then we also talk about the politics of this relationship between the urban and the rural is based on. And that involves the policy actors, which are not only the policymakers at the city council or at the nation state, but also the people who are governed. So it's the governors and the governed. And it's the urban population and governors as well as the rural ones. And these have in itself conflicting interests and values. And urban nature is at the same time a limited resource, which makes, lays out the ground for conflicts and tensions around how to use this resource when it's limited and not everyone can get what they want. And then the policies that are designed and include nature-based solutions, they promote specific benefits, specific solutions linked to urban nature, and they're designed to benefit particular objectives and particular groups of individuals. So it's also a question about who benefits in the rural-urban interplay. And here urban and rural values can differ to a great extent. So nature-based solutions as policy is linked to perceptions, values, and practices of urban actors in relation and versus those of rural actors. Next slide, please. And what is this governing context then that urban nature becomes a solution to societal problems in? It's a governing context where you have a governing architecture which denotes the system and structure of governing, but also the cultures of governing. And part of this culture and system of governing is how acceptance to failing or willingness to fail and take risks in developing policies is part of, and how trust is a basic feature, and how hierarchies are. It's also about the logic, where you're framing nature in nature policy issues as problems, which also sort of outline what kind of cause effects that are behind, that you see in this, and how this can sort of outline what kind of solutions, nature-based solutions, this can be. And then nature-based solutions, they're integrated at present very much from the bottom up by citizens and local communities and policymakers, and often in relation to other policy areas. And it's based on emerging shared understandings of the benefits of urban nature and peri-urban nature, and policy approaches where nature-based solutions are integrated. Next slide, please. So nature-based solutions, they're part and parcel of the policy, society, and its people. And this also involves different positions in relation to taking, enjoying the benefits of urban nature, or avoiding the risk of urban nature, as in where you have problems as environmental problems. And this aspect of social inequality is sort of lying behind or as part of nature-based solutions, where the urban and rural nature is, and one aspect here is that the urban and rural nature is experiential and sensuous and emotional, as well as it's a more technical or ready-to-hand measurable solution that you can integrate. So it's also perceived and cognitive and social, something that emerges in the relations between people. And on this basis, the interest that you have in urban nature is something that is strong. And this involves also the access to urban nature and its amenities and avoidance of the risks. So nature-based solutions, they emerge in the interface between governing and society, or people and businesses and communities, etc. Next slide, please. So nature-based solutions, they're part of politics. When we see politics also as power, as power play and power relations, and power intentions. I hear part and parcel of the government of transitions where you include nature-based solutions. And power is unequal in society. And we see that, for example, in who benefits from urban nature and the inclusion of urban nature, and who gets to decide on this, and who will be left with the risk associated to, for example, environmental problems like climate change impacts, the impacts of climate change. Another aspect here, which is quite strong, is that you have conflicting perceptions of nature, whether this is instrumental or egocentric, or different perceptions of nature that can be quite strong in how you engage with it. And it's also in the interests and values that are related to the nature in the city and in the urban-rural interface, and the activities you can have there, and how it's given priority on different policy agendas. And this also connects to how you promote and manage the linkage to other urban policy areas and other levels of policy, and to the urban-rural divide, where you often see different interests and values being strong in an urban context than in a rural context. And because people are different, and businesses are different, so communities are different, there are different multiple actors that are integrated in the making and implementation of nature-based policies, nature-based solution-informed policies. So it's also a question about who is included and who is excluded in the policies and in making and implementation of the policies. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, we can say that power intentions, they're part and parcel of governing urban transitions with nature-based solutions, and of nature-based solutions itself, where you turn urban nature into a solution for society in the rural-urban interface. So nature-based solutions, they're developed or framed how you see nature here as a solution and used in transformative policy institutions. And as a meaningful entity here, nature-based solutions are generated in the relation between governing and its people. And it's a living nature that affects, and it's a living nature, not a dead thing, that affects governing cultures and policy innovative capacity. And this also relates to how the interface between the urban and the rural is managed. And nature-based solutions emerge in the interaction between the urban and the rural nature, how it's used and transferred between the two, and policy institutions and actors where certain procedures, processes, norms, power structures, and perceptions of governing are institutionalized. So overall, we can say that nature-based solutions, far more than only being a solution that you can integrate in policies, it's a political arena where it almost in itself becomes an actor in transformative governing. Next slide, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne, for this very inspiring talk. I think we will definitely get back to you later on in the panel discussion. I'm now asking Lawrence to give his talk, and I want to introduce Lawrence briefly. Lawrence Jones works at the Center for Ecology and Hydrology in the UK. He has an over 20 years research experience in the fields of ecosystem services, including valuation modeling techniques and trade-offs between these services. And in Regreen, he leads the work package on urban drivers, pressures, and solutions. Lawrence, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ellen, and hello to everyone who's listening. So I'll just briefly explain some of the context to this talk. So this builds on ideas we've been developing in two urban projects. So there's the Regreen project, which you've heard of, and also the Decipher project. And this is ideas from lots of different contributors. So there's a long author list here. Next slide, please. So we know that cities are highly complex and things operate at multiple scales in cities. So on the left, we have individual street trees. Then moving up in scale, you have parks, neighborhoods and districts. And then on the right-hand side, you have peri-urban areas, sort of rural areas outside of the city. And the human and climatic and other pressures operate at all of these scales, but the services that are provided by urban nature-based solutions, sometimes they operate at a particular scale or a smaller range of scales. So very specific scales for heat mitigation, under and near the trees, compared to things like flooding and air pollution, where you need to think much bigger scale. So drawing on these, I'm just going to run through a few examples and sort of thinking about how we apply this urban-rural linkages, which is obviously the focus of this conference. Next slide, please. So we've been developing this idea of upstream and downstream effects. So this takes into account that some of these interactions have a fixed direction, some of these are variable. Sometimes these interactions don't have a specific direction. But there's different sort of thematic areas which all have a relevance to urban-rural interactions. So you have watersheds, airsheds, biodiversity, food and resources, and people. All of these have strong urban-rural interactions. So I'm just going to focus on 3 of these to give some examples and think about it in the context of where's the best place to put new nature-based solutions. Next slide. I'll start with watersheds because everybody knows what a watershed is, I hope. And most people understand that, water flows downhill through a stream network. And you have a city somewhere along this river, for example. So next click. So anything that happens upstream of that city in the catchment has the potential to alter water quality or flood risk for the city. But you also have downstream effects. So there's the dotted red arrow coming down from the city, which shows that urban pollutants, also heat absorbed in the urban environment, will affect things downstream as well. Next click. But it gets more complicated even with water. So you might have a groundwater catchment, which is dictated by the geology, the underlying rock type underneath the city. So this could be completely different from the surface water catchment. Next click. This has implications if we want to think about nature-based solutions outside of the city, which can still benefit the city. So on the left, you have woodland planted in a catchment to reduce flood risk, to change the height or the timing of the flood peak. And then on the right, you might have woodland planted in the groundwater catchment, which helps to reduce pesticides or fertilizers entering the groundwater. And then obviously within the city, you have individual interventions which might reduce flooding from rainfall, fluvial flooding. Next slide. So we can extend this concept to think also about airsheds. So again, we have our little grey city with a little lake and some woodland in it. And you have a prevailing wind direction. So the winds in this example come mainly from the southwest. So if there are pollutant sources upwind, then they come over the city and they affect the city. You also get downstream effects, so the city also affects the air quality downstream. Next click. But it gets complicated because airsheds aren't fixed. So this is some modeling work we've done in Wales. So the blue represents a large patch of woodland, and you can see the little streamers coming out of it, which show the benefit, the reduced concentrations as a result of the woodland. So if you want to, next click. If you want to plant trees, then you need to think about where the trees go in relation to the dominant pollution sources. And then just lastly, some biodiversity. You get species moving in and out of cities from rural areas. So there's bats in Texas, for example, move in and out of the city to feed and to roost. So I will leave it there, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lawrence. That was quite neat. Get it done really on time and give all the information that you were asked to give us, and to be so inspiring. So we will leave it as this at the moment and get back to the next speaker. Do not forget you have a 5-minute pitch. And the next speaker is Wanben Wu. Wanben is a PhD student. My timer doesn't stop. Sorry. Wanben Wu is a PhD student at Fudan University in Shanghai, China, and he works in the Key Laboratory for Biodiversity Science and Ecological Engineering. He studies green spaces in urbanization processes beyond the municipal boundaries. So I assume that his urban areas do comprise the urban-rural interaction as well. Wanben, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Wanben Wu. My presentation will be measuring quality and quantity of urban green space in the face of Chinese policy to restore urban areas, a lesson from 107 Chinese cities. Okay, next slide, please. So as we all know that urban green space is very important to the environment and economy, also the social and mentally. And next, please. So what happened in China in the past decades, that we all know that in China that urbanization rate is very high right now, and is keep growth. By 2013, Chinese urbanization rates may be expected to reach 70%, 75%, and also the extreme growth has brought many changes to the ecosystem and also the UGS development. Next, please. So in face of this rapid urbanization, there are a lot of problems, environmental problems that the urbanization needed. And so in this background, Chinese have published a lot of policies to overcome the urbanization effects. For example, in Shanghai, there is a lot of environmentally related policies, and you can see that in Shanghai, with these policies, the Shanghai's parks, both the area and numbers of the parks have grown a lot. Next, please. So in these two big backgrounds in China, the urbanization and a lot of policies that Chinese government have published, we have proposed these scientific questions: how effective the UGS implementation of city under the latest greening policies in China. Easily say that are we successful using these policies? Next, please. So we have listed these four objectives. Next one. Thank you. So in order to doing that, we have selected 107 cities in China with using the population bigger than 5 million. And next one, please. And we also used all available Landsat images from 1919 to 2019. Next one. In order to find out the different development degree in the urban area, we have using the 9-night images to propose a new indices named normalized urban development indices to reclassify the urban area into 3 kinds of gradient named long-term built up, new built up, and also non-built up. And next, please. So you can see in the long-term built-up gradient, the urban area has turned greening since 2000. For example, in Shanghai and also Beijing, you can see in the long-term built-up gradient, it turned greening significantly. Next, please. And we also statistically the percent of the greening area and the bowling area. Next, please. So you can see in the in the city clusters, you can see in the rich city or the well-development cities like Shanghai, Beijing, and Guangzhou, it's a lead in turn greening, so it turn greening sooner. Next, please. We also have analyzed the major driving factors for the UGS activities. We've stacked 8 factors for this analyzation, including the climate needed, and also land use change, and also the socio-economic factors. Next, please. So we found out the carbon dioxide and also air temperature, shortwave radiation, and precipitation are positively related to UGS development, and the impervious surface coverage is main factors inhibited the urban green space greening. So, and turn to the GDP, the economic factors, we can find out the economic is very related to the urban green space in the built-up area. Okay, next, please. This is economic and green trend, relationship between these two. Next, please. Okay, I think I have described the factors. And next one, please. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Wenben. I could see that you are so deep into your study that it was so hard for you to reduce the huge amount of slides that you captured to bring all this huge information together. And I appreciate it very much, but we have to stick to our time. And for this reason, I'm asking the next speaker to present. And the next speaker is Xiangyu Luo. And Xiangyu is a PhD student at Tsinghua University in Beijing, China. He works at the Department of Earth System Science and focuses on sustainable development and global environmental changes. His studies focus on the structures and functions of urban ecosystem effects on global environmental change and on urban biodiversity and ecosystem services. And both Wenben and Xiangyu are PhD students in the frame of the Regreen project. So Xiangyu, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Shang Yu from Tsinghua University, and I want to share some initial works with you and about biodiversity patterns of urban trees under urban-rural gradients in Shenzhen, China. And so next, please. And as we all know, please back to the second one. Yeah, as we all know, urban biodiversity is important for urban ecosystems. It's a fundamental ecosystem services for a livable environment for residents, and it also helps provide various ecosystems services sustainably. And on the contrary, the urbanization blurred the boundary between urban and rural areas, which caused the fragmentations of natural landscapes and changed the original patterns of biodiversity, and leads to the serious threats to urban ecological security. So we want to review how urban ecosystem changes and to provide the guidelines to policymakers to do such the nature-based solution or green infrastructure constructions. And so next, please. And we chose Shenzhen as our study area due to the typical rapid urbanization processes as you shown in the left figure, and we set 350 plots investigation to the urban area to investigate the urban trees by least records. So next, please. And we chose the Shannon Winner index and richness and abundance and the piano index to represent the alpha biodiversity. And we also use the equivalent number to represent the beta biodiversity and to show the patterns. And we also use the urbanization driving factors to develop urban-rural gradients by population density and impervious surfaces within 500-meter buffers and building density, entropy of land use, and GDPs as the driving factors, and to show the influences on biodiversity. So next, please. And we assessed the urbanizations and to review the impacts. As a result, shows that only the A presents the commercial areas and B represents to the industrial, and FG represents the transportation and vacant respectively. So we found only the 4 types of land use areas are significantly different from others on alpha diversity and partly. And as for the influence factors, only impervious surfaces and population have significant influences on alpha biodiversity. And next, please. And as the beta diversity, and we found the 2 equivalent number shows the 2 levels of beta biodiversity, and they have no significant differences. Neither the plots in the same land use types nor the plots in the different land use types. They are all the same, have no significant differences. And and we can see the next slides, please. And we can also see the contribution of interpretations of these influence factors and to the biodiversity, and all the data distributed. It's not it's far away from these 5 factors, so we can see there are no significance as well, and we can draw the conclusion. Please, next slide, please. And we can see the different land use types have the greater impacts on biodiversity due to human land use needs and preferences, and the proportion of urban improvement services is till now the greatest impacts on urban tree biodiversity. And we know, due to the impacts of urbanization on urban tree biodiversity, it's complex and multifactorial, and we found that only the urbanization indices and for the urban-rural gradient is not enough, and we want to do more researches on human management activities and subgenic factors or other preferences and other factors, and to do this kind of works in the further research. So, and that's the initial works I want to share with you till now. Thank you for your attention.
Now you made it. You made it exactly in 5 minutes. So that is perfect. Thank you, Xianyu, for this very nice talk that you gave to us. And I'm surely seeing from the chat room that there are quite a few questions regarding the Chinese situation. So please be with us and be active in our panel discussion later on. I'm passing on to Philipp right now.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I apologize to the last speaker. Somehow the PowerPoint seems to be bugged. It always jumped 2 slides. Anyway, I have the pleasure to introduce the next 4 and final inputs to the session, starting with a session an input that comes from Professor Guiqing Yang and a PhD student at his department, Liao Wang. Yang Guiqing is a collaborator in our research project that we conduct at the TU Berlin together with his university, the Chongqing University, where he heads the urban planning department at the College of Architecture and Urban Planning. And Liao Wang, who I think will present on behalf of both right now, is a PhD candidate of urban and rural planning at the Chongqing University, also focusing on influencing factors of Chinese urbanization and urban-rural interaction, especially on the land use and employment. So is Liao Wang, are you there to present?
Yes, can you hear me?
Fantastic. Okay, great.
Great.
Thank you very much. So you have 5 minutes. I put the timer on and I will reappear when the time is up, okay? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your introduction, Professor Philip, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to, on behalf of our research team, to present part of our research. The research topic is the resilience of industrial growth and optimization of the spatial distribution in the developing county, the case study of Linju County in China. Next slide, please. Okay, the 5 parts of my presentation. So next part. Next slide, please. Sorry, back to the to the introduction part, please. Okay, so the regional economic resilience can be used to measure the economic stability of a region against external shocks and the ability to achieve long-term transformation and development. And also to promote the industry resilience is one of the important goals of the territory development planning in China. And counties with special autonomy integrate urban and rural areas geographically in China, which is a very important area for the urban-rural interaction. In this research, our case is located in the Shandong province, it's a Linqiu County, just at the middle of the Shandong province. So next slide, please. So here comes to our research question. What is the relationship between the fluctuation of industrial growth and the construction land in Linqiu County? Next, please. Okay, so the research will first measure the industrial resilience during the 2009 to 2018 in Linqiu by calculating the instability index and the sensitivity index to observe the overall resilience value and also each industry's influence on the industrial growth in Linqiu County. So next one, please. And then we will analyze the spatial distribution in Linqiu by using the land use data in 2008 and 2018 and visualize them in the GIS platform. And finally, we will use the Pearson correlation analysis to calculate the relationship between the resilience value and various land use in Linqiu County, following by suggestions on the territory planning process for improving the industrial development. Next one, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so here comes the analysis and results. We can see from the charts that the total economic growth rate fluctuated slightly in recent 10 years in Linqiu County, which is more stable than other counties, and it shows that the industrial growth in Linqiu County has a strong dependence on the current mode. The next one, please. And this is the sensitivity index calculation of each industry. We can see that the secondary industries will influence the overall industry growth most. Next one, please. We can find from the proportion of Linqiu's GDP that the total amount of GDP in Linqiu County accounts for a relatively low level in Weifang. The proportion of primary and tertiary industry structure is higher than the level average level, but the proportion of the secondary industry is relatively small. The next one. So here comes to some results. In recent 10 years, the industrial growth of Linqiu County is relatively stable, but it shows a path dependence with a low-level development mode in Linqiu, and also the secondary industry of Linqiu County influenced most. Next slide, please. So we can see from the spatial distribution in Linqiu in 2008 and 2018, we have found that the mean growth of the land use is usually in the center of the city. Next slide, please. And this is the land use proportion of the Linqiu County and the change rate of the land use amount in Weifang during the 10 years. Next slide, please. So we can conclude that the proportion of the ecological land, especially the woodland and grassland of the Linqiu County, maintains at the highest level in Weifang. The total amount of the ecological land remains unchanged in the past 10 years. And the construction land in Linqiu accounts for a small percentage of the total amount in Weifang. The growth rate of the construction land is at the average level of Weifang, and the growth mainly concentrated in the central district. Next slide, please. The final part is a correlation analysis. It shows that the construction land has a significant negative correlation with the industrial growth stability during the 10 years, which shows that the growth of the construction land supports the development of industrial economy currently. Next, please. And here we draw the two conclusions. The first one is a positive correlation between these two factors, show that the current path dependence between the spatial distribution and the local industrial development, which shows that the growth of construction and supporting the development of industrial economy. However, with the current high proportion of the ecological land and the new policy of the permanent basic farmland protection and the ecological protection in the territory planning, industrial growth driven by this kind of mode cannot sustainable in the future. It must need to be changed in this developing country. And in order to improve the total amount of the GDP for a sustainable growth, it's necessary to break through the current path. On one hand, ecological land resources can be transformed into industrial resources to promote the growth. On the other hand, intensive and efficient development of the construction land should be the priority in the planning process. That's all for the summary of our research. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Liao, I think, please stay until the end of the discussion. I think also Professor Yuqing Yang hopefully will join our panel discussion at the end. I will come to the next input by Marianne Sanderson from Aarhus University. She's a senior environmental economist in the social environmental science group of the Department of Environmental Science in Aarhus, and also the main coordinator of the EU-funded ReGreen project that has been mentioned several times already in this session. Welcome, Marianne, and you have 5 minutes for your input. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Philip, and good afternoon, everybody. I would like to talk about a project analysis that we have carried out at Aarhus University on another project, and it's on nature-based solutions on rural areas for urban flood protection, and it really links back to what Lauren said about watershed approaches to managing risks in rural and urban areas and the benefits outside cities. So next slide, please. So in the northern part of Europe, we experience increasingly wet climates. We have more frequent and severe fluvial floodings, and that in turn causes increasing damage costs to cities in addition to health and well-being damages. So the scope of this analysis was to look at the prospects of using nature-based solutions, and in particular natural water retention measures in rural areas to reduce the flood risks in urban areas. So the downstream approach that Lawrence talked about. And in particular, we looked at, well, those who own the land that would be flooded to protect the cities, what do they think about this kind of payment for ecosystem services type of contract? Next slide, please. And the case area is from Denmark, the middle part of Jutland. It's the second largest stream. It's called Storåen. We don't have rivers, we only have streams in Denmark. And it flows through a town of Holstebro, the home to 35,000 inhabitants. And this town, due to the increase in water flow with increasing precipitation, but also because of the construction in the floodplain, has led to 10 extreme flood events over the last 90 years. And of those, half of those have happened since 1970, and 4 of them within the last 5 or 6 years. Next slide, please. So the nature-based solution that we looked at in this project was based on an adaptation option identified by the municipality of Holstebro to build a valley dam that would only function in the event of extreme water flow, and then to consider farmers as a way of being water managers, not only providing food and fodder. The analysis is based on a choice experiment among farmers in that area, asking them about the payment for letting farmland be flooded according to a number of contractual elements, like would they like to negotiate collectively or individually? What should the level of annual payment be? Would they like, and at what level, to have compensation in case of crop losses? And would they accept a requirement or not to have flood resilient crops? Next slide, please. So at the top here, you see the results of this. This is based on willingness to accept a contract with the municipality to allow for periodic flooding of their land. And we divided, you see, two kinds of results. One is a willingness to accept under risk experience. So that is for farmers who've actually already experienced a crop loss on the land. So you see that generally their compensation or payment levels are higher than for those farmers who have not experienced that before. Then you see there are different levels of compensation or payment levels, and that really depends on the contractual agreement. So if it's a collective negotiation compared to an individual negotiation, farmers are willing to obtain less payment. And the same thing, compensation at crop loss, if that's included, then the annual payment would not need to be as high. But this analysis has really shown that farmers would be willing to pay water managers for the municipality, subject to payments. But it also really shows that this is really dependent on the location of farms, the activity level of farms, and not least the attitudes and sense of responsibility. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for your attention. You can access the paper for free until mid of December under this link. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Marianne. Thank you for giving us 30 more seconds for our discussion at the end. Very sharp and well-structured talk. I will go straight to the next input by Lene Winter. And what is really exciting about having Lene Winter as part of our panel is that she's actually not working at the moment in the university context, but as a member of the city administration of Aarhus, and is in that capacity also a partner of the Regreen project. Lene, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yes, I will talk about gaps and potentials in the context of using nature-based solutions.
Well, we have a problem here with the sound.
Okay.
Yeah, now it seems fine. You need to unmute.
So I think I'm on now.
Yeah.
Great. I want to make a presentation about the gaps and potentials in the context of using nature-based solutions in rural areas to solve challenges in the urban areas. Next slide. As you said, Aarhus Municipality is an urban living lab in Regreen, and we're working with nature-based solutions. And our population is growing every year. And as everybody else, we are facing the global climate and biodiversity crisis. And we see nature-based solutions as a logical solution to deal with some of the challenges that we face in the municipality. Our focus is on using nature-based solutions to deal with the challenges of climate change, such as adaptation to more and heavy rainfalls, and at the same time increase biodiversity and increase green places in both rural and urban areas. As you see at the picture, we have had a situation in Aarhus in 2012 where the river of Aarhus, or should I call it a stream, Marianne, is flooding through the center of Aarhus, and normally the river is nearly 2 meters lower. And actually in February this year, we were facing a similar situation. So my presentation will be about how a challenge with flooding is handled in a municipality where the targets also have a high priority for politicians. Next slide. In the beginning of this month, a greener Aarhus and a Aarhus with more blue was approved by the City Council. And these two strategies is our new framework. It gives our directions and targets for making a greener city with more blue. And a plan for a blue-green structure is also coming in 2021 and supporting the realization of the targets. On the next slides, I will focus on water management to prevent flooding in rural areas by nature-based solutions. But actually in the city, we have the same activities because we will have to cope with the challenges of flooding too in the city. Next slide. Here you see a little bit more of the Aarhus and the municipality, and we have the center of Aarhus, and we have Aarhus River Valley, and the rainwater flows from that area, and you see the blue lines, the streams, and it flows to Oslo Wetland and Brabant Lake. And from there, it goes through the narrow Aarhus stream right through the center of Aarhus and to the ocean. So the stream of Aarhus is actually a bottleneck for the water to get out to the ocean, and it presents a risk of flooding in the old parts of Aarhus in the center. So this situation is not new, as you saw, but what is the burning platform now for the city council to make some new targets? And as I mentioned, we experienced 3 weeks of heavy rain in February and March, causing the water level to rise all the way through Aarhus River Valley, and levels that we haven't had for a long time actually. So it was flooding roads, closing the traffic, and was very close to cause expensive flooding in the center of Aarhus. And the areas around Brabant Lake and Oslo Wetland was flooded too, and causing some damages on houses. And the lakes had an important function as buffer, preventing flooding in the center of Aarhus. But at the same time, we had to admit that this capacity of retention of water in the lakes and the surroundings isn't enough in the future. So we have to make some new actions, and a new target was set by the City Council to use retention of water in rural areas. And that means they want to double the capacity in rural areas to avoid flooding.
Lena, we have a technical problem again. Your time is actually up. Could you? Okay. But I give you a minute to conclude.
Yes.
Yes, please.
The next slide and the next slide. This is just to show the situation and why we have to do something about it, because this is flooding from cloudburst and streams. And the next slide. Here you can see we have some maps where we can actually see where we could have retention of water. And next slide. And actually here we look at a northern part called Mellen, near one of the streams. And here we want to make nature-based solutions. And actually, we also have the money for it now. Here in September, the City Council has allocated some of the money needed for such projects. So this is the kind of nature-based solutions we're going to make. And at the right, you can see how things like that could look like afterwards. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Lena, I can completely understand why the municipality of Aarhus lets you be part of the research project. It's a very powerful demonstration of what cities are facing and what research can probably do. So we come now to the last presentation. It was supposed to be delivered by two colleagues, Sui Li Zhao and Huang Huang. Unfortunately, Huang Huang who was supposed to join from Shanghai had technical difficulties. So I think Sui Li, you are here to present.
Yes.
Are you there? Great. I will just say a few words. Huang is actually a postdoctoral researcher at our university, the TU Berlin, and also part of the Urban Rural Assembly project. And Sui Li Zhao is also part of the Urban Rural Assembly project, but she actually works at the Leibniz Institute for Ecological Spatial Development in Dresden. So Sui Li, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Philip. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening. And I'm glad to give this primary fundings of our URA project, which was supported by BMBF. And our team is Leibniz Institute and also the TU Berlin. We work together. So next, please. Oh, sorry, I forgot the topic. Actually, I want to give this presentation is about the assessment of the relationships between land transition and the social ecologic restriction at the local level. The case study areas is in Haizhou in China. Next, please. This is the main structure and the presentation. Next, please. Okay, the background is we talk a lot about this urbanization in China. Actually, Taizhou city also is one of this city. The population is more than 5 million, and this fast urbanization process pay more attention by people from different perspectives. But the urban-rural interface actually is call for more attention. Our research team working on this urban-rural interface, we try to identify the character of this urban-rural interface, this transfer from the rural to urban, and how the character look like. It looks like urban, but maybe it still keep the soul of the rural. So that's our question and the original ideas to do this research. Next, please. Okay, from this picture, we can see that the Taizhou city in the east coast of China is 2 or 3 hours by train from Shanghai. Our research areas actually in the Huangyan district is in Taizhou city. Huangyan district in the can be a bridge. West part is very rural areas, and the east part is connected with the municipal center. So it's a very ideal research areas for this urban-rural interface. And Haizhou is, I have talked about it, just one of ordinary municipalities follow this very fast urbanization progress in China. Next, please. And what happens there? And we try to use the GIS gears to map the landscape and land cover and land use change during the past 20 years. From this map, we can see clearly what happened there. Next, please. We can see that the physical and the spatial changes. The urban space actually from this right tables, we can see it increased dramatically because this construction, the settlement development. So the urban space actually encroaches a lot of agricultural space. But from the right table, we can see why this agricultural space also increased, because we have very strict cultivated land protection from the government. If you use some land for agricultural land, you need to give this compensation from other types of land use. So this table also shows that the forest, the wetland, and also the bare land decrease a lot. So we can see this model, the urban space encroach agricultural space, and the agricultural space encroach the ecology space. This is a GIS map giving us the general impression. Then we zoom into the local areas, we can see what happened, the daily life, the social and ecological changes. And what impressive, not only this very busy construction there, also touched us because this vegetable garden around this construction everywhere. Then the interviews show that even the farmer, they are now citizens. They live in the high buildings, the flat, but their hobbies or maybe their work still planting the crops and still enjoying this vegetable garden work. So we can see this vegetable garden everywhere. So in the blood, maybe they still farmer. Even the life have changed, the space have changed. Next, please. And we also find that the river changed a lot during the past 20 years. Along the river, we can see the high scriptures and also this concrete bank for the flooding control. But no matter how this river space changed, the fishing, the hobby, the recreation is still kept by the local peoples. The red pictures we can see clearly. Some people are still fishing there even before the park. It is orange garden. So next, please. And so from this space change, we can see the ecological risk actually about the water pollution and also the waste and very, okay. So it's very important. We need to pay attention to this ecological risk about the soil pollution, water pollution. Next, please. Then we mentioned about this flood risk because the river we changed a lot. We have showed before. Next, please. And the funding we have found, firstly, is urban-rural transformation. The physics change actually doesn't entail this social change. Okay, so they still keep there as a cultural-based everyday use of this land. Next, please. So the second is that we should pay much attention to the ecological risk in the urban-rural interface. Next, please. So the conclusion is that land transformation is a prominent feature of the urbanization process, which has considered its impact on both ecological structure and the social organization. And also we need to pay much attention to this culture and nature-based solution to facing the challenge of the ecological risk. Yeah, that's our primary findings. Thank you. Next, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've come to the end of our inputs, and I would like to, first of all, invite my co-chair, Ellen, back to switch her camera on, and also all the contributors, because we would like to spend a few minutes to discuss amongst ourselves maybe some sort of takeaways from presenting a range of really exciting but also quite different approaches to research the urban-rural interface. And we could you all the presenters maybe join back? Great, wonderful. I can see you now. So we'll spend a few minutes sort of thinking across a few issues amongst the presenters, and then we look at the chat and questions that were presented, that were offered by our viewers. Ellen, please.
Philipp, you stop sharing the screen so that we can see each other much better.
Sorry, yeah, I will do that. Okay, thank you. So I will start just with the first observation. We had a very, very powerful start with Anne Jensen, who talked about power constellations and power relations across the urban-rural interface, and raising questions, social and political questions, and demanding that we would those as really inextricably linked to the technical questions of nature-based solutions. And I'm just wanting to go back to this framing and provoke the other viewers. Maybe some of them have presented some very specific research on modeling certain aspects of land use or water or greening, and or biodiversity. And so how do you, what sort of definition of nature-based solutions do we need? You know, how do you, particularly those who worked on quite technical modelings with based on quantitative indicators, how do you sort of take a provocation such as that of Anne Jensen? Who would like to start? Lawrence,
I can offer some first reflections. So I think in terms of the sort of governance and the social interactions, I think it's interesting to explore this in much more detail. So certainly from a governance perspective, if we're talking about implementing nature-based solutions outside of the city to benefit people inside the city, then some of those may have to be outside of the city's jurisdiction. So there are some interesting challenges there. And I think just on the social interactions, the last talk was also very interesting, thinking about how people who've moved from rural areas into the city, how they use that space on the edges of cities. I thought that was very interesting.
Who would like to comment next? Maybe just wave at me if you want to. Marianne, please.
Yes, thank you. I think this governance is really central in order to make a nature-based solution work in practice. So we've seen an example from Aarhus municipality working with specific areas to retention areas, and the case I represented from Holstebro, and in the latter case, they have actually negotiated with farmers down to the stream to let their land be flooded. And the alternative is, of course, to buy up the land or to make land swapping. So it's a whole complex interaction also with people maybe wanting to hold on to their land. And then also because it's place-based, it's really necessary to, at least with water, to have a contiguous area to have the retainment. So you can't have some landowners opting in and others opting out because water does not know boundaries, legal boundaries. So governance is so important in that.
So I would have a question related to the two Danish examples. So do the farmers in your areas, do they own the land? Do they lease the land? Is it a conflict, the ownership, or how do you handle this situation?
In Aarhus, the most of them, they own their own land, or they borrow, they pay for it to have agriculture farming on it from other farmers. So and also they have to have some amount of area to have their allowance for have cows or something like that. So they won't just let go of the areas, and they have to earn some money too. So it's a conflict actually that it's volunteeringly that they have to go into the projects. So sometimes we have to wait for quite a long time to make the project. Yeah.
Thank you.
Marianne, again, please.
Oh yeah, just to say in this case study that I talked about, it was farmers owning the land and accepting a payment from the municipality to let their land be flooded. So they wouldn't give up the production rights to their land.
So maybe to transfer this question to the Chinese context, Sully, how are villages in the urbanizing hinterland of around Taisho, how are they involved in negotiating processes and new governance mechanisms of land transaction, for instance, or encroachment on the ecological zones that you described?
Okay, actually, we during this field survey and the interviews, we find the urban-rural interfaces have very special character. They don't like the city have enough monies for the construction, like the drainage system. For example, this water pollution and the flood management, the whole water management systems, it's better to use the nature-based solution. It's more effective and efficient. For example, use this natural bank, not this channelized bank for the river. Also, some artificial wetland can help purify the water quality. It's very helpful for the local people. Then the government actually, they want to put much more monies to make it fast and it's more like the city, but they don't have enough monies to support the broad areas urban-rural interface. So from my perspective, this bottom up from the village, the involvement is also very important for this transformation from the rural to from rural urban perspectives. We need to tailor the special nature-based solution for water management, for the ecological protection. That's my ideas for this governance. Yeah.
Yeah, Yang Guiqing, well, I can't see you on camera, but can you follow this conversation, or do you want to add? Ah, great. There you are. You need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hi, Philip. Hi. Dear distinguished guests and speakers, good evening, good afternoon. And I'm very glad to join this session. And unfortunately, my laptop cannot connect the screen and the sound, the microphone. So I shifted the Wang Li Yao's laptop. For this discussion, I would like to have two comments. One is that to how to identify the concept of natural-based solution, because I think the background, the condition, the difference from the European region and China, as in the different development phases. I think in China side, there is a high density and the traditional agriculture model, and also the high density population, and also the region, the nature means the nature between the urban and the rural. There are a lot of and the sub settlements, we call the small towns and villages. So along the urbanization corridor, the nature-based, it should be considered as integrated with that the rural and also small town. I think there is a combination with the nature, with the ecological, the preservation, and also the growth, sustainable growth of the local economy and society. So I think this is the first thing. The second thing, I think how to solve the problem that the transfer from the local traditional agriculture to the ecological value, and how to make the growth, economic growth, combination the protection of natural resources, and also find the opportunity for the labor force. This is quite a challenge for the Chinese urbanization period. So we follow the very important project led by Professor Philipp Misselwitz, as called Urban Rural Assembly. So I think this is a very quite key the ideas that how to think about the assembly is to cope with that the nature-based solution. So this is my comment. I think. Thank you.
Thanks, Guiqing. I will pass on to Ellen do you want to moderate the next?
I
know that Anne had.
Anne wanted to add on this, and then I would like to put a central question to all the Chinese contributors. But I will speak out the question now, and you can think about it while Anne is giving her comment. So the question I would like to ask you is, what would be the take-home message regarding the urban greening processes or the urban greening challenges in China during the last 20 years? So this is something I would like to ask all of the Chinese contributors, but before you can give an answer, then Anne, I will give you the word first.
Thank you very much, and thanks a lot for these really interesting different insights into how nature-based solutions are integrated in different studies, and it was very instructive. And I was kind of wondering with your questions about how we can understand nature-based solutions in a way that would promote this the uptake of nature-based solutions. And I think this aspect about it being political, the moment you go from urban nature to a solution, is quite significant, because then you have, like if you think about the urban and the rural, you have different values connected to nature, where some of the farmland and farmers that Mariana was talking about, and also some of the Chinese case studies, to them a need, and this is based on studies, not my studies, but other people's studies, to them a good farmship is a neat field where you don't have the messiness. And while to an urban citizen, and this is based on some of the studies we've done in other projects, sometimes a park, which is quite not very diverse in biological terms, but it can be this breathing hole, this recreational space, and an extension of the living room needed if you have two young children in a small apartment. And these are very different values that you attach to urban nature, and this is built into when you talk about it as solutions. And so the definition of how we work with nature-based solutions must also consider this, that it also favors, some solutions favor some interests, and some other solutions favor other interests. And this is among citizens groups, but it's also between the urban and the rural. Another example is with food, how nature can provide food, but it's a different case if you look at it from inside the city, where you need the rural areas, or from the rural areas where it's more of a livelihood. Yeah, it was just a comment to the definition and how we can work with it. Remember, it's political.
Thank you. So Ellen already formulated a question specifically directed to our Chinese participants here. Who would like to start? Ellen, do you
Okay.
want to? Yeah, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So as for me, I have do some research about urban greening. So I have stacked 107 cities for this research, for this study. As for me, I think that it's the fact that reality that the urban in China has turned greening in the especially in the past 20 years. But some well-developed cities like Shanghai and Beijing, maybe earlier, inside of the city, so-called long-term built-up area, stable built-up area. So I can conclude that there may be two main reasons. The first one is that policy driven. Yeah. there is not a policies connected to the green instrument development. For example, a greening city or ecological city or civilization or so on. Not of keywords about this. And the second one is maybe because of the land use change. You know, when the city develop in one level, it becomes stable, and there is no more new building come up. So people can start to improve the urban green space. So that's one main reason that in the long-term built-up area, it turns greening. And in the non-built-up area, maybe because of the land use management, there is publications said that in China and India needs the words greening, right? So that's mainly because of the forest increase and also the cropland increased, the LAI increased of these both types. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Can you?
Yeah, and I want to add some comments about that because in my based on my knowledge, I think the greening processes in China during the past 20 years have experienced the large area for protecting the nature hazards and into the create more entertainment for residents. So the scales will be from the larger scale and down to the local scale. And based on this knowledge, we think the estimation of the greening processes and the challenges we use one is the land use conversion, and second is the high resolution to see the green infrastructure's construction. And that's the two ways to estimate the greening processes. And I think as for the challenges in China, I think because the greening process is more how to say that, it's just a livable environment for good environment. It's crowded in the eastern of China, and a larger part of areas of China is not suitable for live. So the challenge is how can we doing the such a crowded population and to have the enough greening spaces, and that's the key questions of us, and to build a more greener city or healthy city. So and other things, it's accessibility. And because we know the losses of green park or the lacks of green spaces or blue spaces for population it's a key question. It's a key problem for us. And there are so many institution areas and have the high green cover, and also have a lot of green spaces, or just like the nature mountains in the city, or the nature vegetations in the city, and will be locked and will be not allowed to people to get in. So that's accessibility will be another challenge for Chinese greening. So, and how can we face that? I think we can do more researches about the in the city, and to improve the accessibility of the green spaces and others. And for the other hand, we need to I think we can do more to how can find the priorities sites of the nature-based solution, and to make more ecosystem services for the surrounding residents. I think it will be better. And that's my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, you, sorry. That's a good in speaking up your first name.
Okay, you can call me Liao, so okay, thank you. And I will mention 2 points. I think the green spaces in rural, I mean cities are very different, because the green space maybe in Shanghai is more likely to London. It has some green belts. It has a small spots for the green spaces for residence activities, but for the developing counties like small cities, the green spots are very small, or it doesn't have enough amount of green space in these small cities. So I think the policies for protecting the green spots in China maybe can be divided to several aspects for big cities, small cities, and the priority is to meet the demand of local residents. And the second one is we have a territorial planning policy. We have a ecological red line and the protection of farmland. So I mean, connecting to the green spaces in counties and cities, we have further protection for the ecological land, which has mentioned in my research. So this part of ecological resources can be also connected to the industrial resources and can make full use and make efficient use of the ecological resources, and to maybe to promote the industrial growth and to provide more spaces for the residents. I think now we need some policies, and we need some researches on this kind of topics. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ellen, should we have a quick look at the chat?
I did. That's why I pulled that together as well. So I think we are quite good with the chat so far. And I'm not sure, do you want to have the last word? Because it's 3 minutes past 3 and we will be kicked out of our virtual room pretty soon. So I'm happy to hand over to you, Philipp.
Maybe we'll give Sully another chance, who just wanted to contribute.
Good.
Thank you, Philipp, and thank you, Ellen. I want to give short comments about the question about this greening progress and the challenges. Actually, we find that now the ecosystem surveys and the nature-based solution is a quite popular concept in the city areas, because we mentioned the spongy city, biological city, garden city. But in the urban-rural interface, actually, still a lack of this attention to protect the ecosystem system. This is one challenge. This nature-based solutions should get mainstreaming in the small city or the urban-rural interface, not only in the city areas. This is one challenge. The second one is about this nature-based solution. Also need to consider this social-based and the culture-based solution. For example, the vegetable garden. Actually, the city areas, they want to develop the green systems for the aesthetic, for the beauty, the green belt, green way. But the local people, they love this vegetable planting more than these beautiful flowers. This is our culture. So nature-based solutions also need to integrate the social-based and the culture-based solution. That's another challenge. Yeah, so that's my short comments about this Ellen's question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to thank everybody. I mean, this has been really fascinating also in the diversity of different understandings of nature-based solutions. And we are all somehow, as we are here in the room, involved in interdisciplinary research contexts where we try to also, and we are only beginning these projects, where we try to sort of negotiate these different kinds of knowledges and approaches to work towards maybe a more holistic understanding of nature-based solution. So which includes a sensitivity towards values, power that was brought in and also illustrated through some examples. I'm thinking about Marianne's farmers, it made me sort of very aware that we are asking for people to dance with each other across the urban-rural interface that are very different people, have different access to resources, different forms of expressing their needs. They're organized in different ways, and to organize this dance amongst unequals is not easy in practice. And I think it's fascinating also to think through this beyond existing governance mechanisms. And we are in our project sort of thinking also in terms of strategic informal tools to create conversations, bring people together. And also, this makes us kind of, maybe those of us who work with very quantitative modeling based sort of approaches, it also poses the question, how do we communicate this kind of knowledge to different sort of actors and bring that into the conversation. Ellen, last word to you. I really would like to thank from my side to all the contributors. It was fascinating, and I hope we all stay in touch. Ellen, do you want to conclude?
Thank you. And I also appreciated all the talks, and I very much appreciated that we could stick to this new structure, giving just one introductory talk, and then all the other talks were like pitches that added onto, so that we got a lot of different angles and points of view into. And by doing so, we enlarged the room for a vivid discussion, which I really learned from a lot, and I appreciate it very much. So thank you all very much for participating and for sharing your knowledge with us, and have a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Philipp, bye bye.
Bye-bye.